Here we are under the hood of the 96 Buick Roadmaster with the 5.7 LT derivative engine here. You can tell that by the gear-driven water pump, and the distributor is hiding back under there. The issue I'm having to deal with here are these heater hoses. This one comes from the bottom of the pump, one comes from there, and this hose that runs across here is also involved in this deal. This is an assembly with a couple of restrictors in it. One of them is in this T, and the other restriction valve is at the end of this hose. Well, there it is. There it is right there. It's at the end of this hose, and it's got a factory metal crimp right there, and it connects here. And somebody very inconveniently has shortened this hose. Well, if you notice, it's been jack-legged because this is an off-the-shelf T, which doesn't work right here. And this hose is supposed to come all the way back to right about here, and it got cut off. It probably was leaking. I guess that's why you got this jury rig. Well, I was going to eventually replace this anyway because this doesn't make the heater and the degassing recirculation in the tank work right. Because that's what this line is, a pressure balance line, and there's a line right here that goes up into the bottom of the tank. So it's leaking down here. You can see the water on my fingers. And the coolant's going slowly down, so it's either leaking back here or this plastic is cracked, and that's what they usually do. I bet you this T cracked. So I'm going to replace the whole thing just like I did on the 96 wagon a couple of years ago when it blew up on the wife on the way to work. Fortunately, she had the wherewithal to just scoot into the parking lot and not burn the engine up. Well, here's what you use to fix it. And this is an AC Delco part. Made in China, of course, but I'm glad to get it. And I'm just going to replace all the hoses, and from Rock Auto this cost about 70 bucks. And it's got two hoses, the specialty, this special bent hose, and this valve, the part that's actually leaking right now, and this bracket, all in one assembly, so it's fairly easy to replace. If you notice, if I can get the light right, you can barely see it there. There's actually a restriction down in there where that drops down to less than 1/4 of an inch in diameter, and this dude right here has something rattling in it, and it does the same. There's a hole down in there that drops down to encourage some flow to come through this tank for degassing purposes. So this engine, the radiator is actually above. Top of the radiator is actually above the top of the engine, and the cooling passageways and all in this LT engine, it actually flows backwards from a normal motor. And I have another video about how that thermostat housing works, which is quite different from most of your GM stuff. And this balances out the coolant flow with the flow it needs through the tank. So if you jury rig it like this, you kind of screw up all of GM's engineering, and also the heater doesn't work with the crap on this one too, I think. So the deal is, I'm going to pull all this jury rigging and this old leaky hose out. I may have to leave this stubby part here they put in because they cut this way back, and put this new rig in and not have to worry about this mess at all. If you try to add up the prices of all these parts, it's going to get pretty close to the 70 bucks this cost me with shipping. But you're not going to be able to get that T and that restrictor valve. So you might as well just buy the whole thing and replace all of that and not have to worry about it blowing up on you when you're out on the highway somewhere. So let me get into this. I mean, you don't have to watch me loosen clamps and pull hoses off. You know how to do that. And I'll get back when I get it off. Now, and it's leaking somewhere in here. This hose seems to be a bit soft, or it could be cracked in this seam. It's hard to tell. It's all wet and slimy right now. And this is what I'm talking about as just a stock off-the-shelf plain T. You can't do that. And it looks like, well, this is original because this is still on it. And these hoses are clamped under there. This one might have been changed. No, it's way too squishy to have not been changed, to have been changed at some point. So it's time to do this before this leaves me on the side of the road. And you can see the difference in the T's by a mile, the difference in the length, you know, but more importantly, this one has the restrictor in the right place to divide the flow up properly. And this one is a little bit different. This thing's a little shorter, but you know, oh well, they do improve and change these things over time. So let me get this on. I'm gonna get a little bit of you know, non-petroleum lubricant and put it on these hoses just to make sure they go on there easy and seal up. And we'll get this puppy on here. Okay, I got the new thing in. I guess the most tedious thing is putting the bolt in this bracket right here. There's not much finger room to get to it, and it's right there between those hoses. Barely can't see it. But the new stuff is in, and I had to shorten this little hose that somebody put in here, but you know, I don't want to right now replace this another specially bent hose that's supposed to start right here at this T and go all the way back there and then do a Z over and go into the firewall. I'll keep a close look on this, and if it starts acting balloony right here, I will replace it. And I got the factory clamp on this guy down here, and again, I'm going to keep a close eye on this part of the hose here. And you know, I might have to replace these two later, I don't know. I did reuse, well, not reuse, I used the clamps that were already staged on the hoses, these spring clamps, and well, I hate to tell you this, folks, in this sort of application they are far superior than your screwdriver operated breeze clamps, because they always keep a constant pressure on no matter how much the rubber moves. And then this one under here was a little bit not fun to get to, but a little bit of something slimy on the, but not a petroleum product, in the hoses, and they slipped right on there, and it kind of helps them seal. So we're probably, oh, not quite an hour into this operation, and I haven't really been killing myself, so it's not too hard to do, especially when you have that whole assembly to put in. So let me get the coolant back in this thing, button it up, bring it up to pressure, and give it a test. Good morning. Well, it's kind of mid-afternoon the next day, but I've taken this guy for a run, and it's all cooled down overnight, sat overnight. Well, it's as cool as it's going to be. Out here it's about 90. And I looked at all of the joints, and everything looks nice and dry. And even this jury rig that I left in place, and this valve is dry. I thought maybe the leak I had was in this hose, but it's not. All this is dry under there now. So now I have to bleed the cooling system like you have to do on these, because this point where the thermostat housing is below or right at the radiator height, and the air that rises up in the engine can't get out of here, because this hose goes down and that one just goes straight across into the radiator. So I've topped the water up here. Well, I just added water because I'm going to change this later on and give it a good flush. And now I need to loosen and it usually takes a long screwdriver, short ones don't work, to loosen this thing. And watch it until a solid stream of water comes out. And that may take a minute. Okay, there it goes. I know it's hard to see that, but you can see the water drip down there on the pump. I usually do that a couple of times to be really fussy about it, because I noticed even the second time a little bit of an air bubble will come out of this thing. But one of the things this tank is supposed to be doing, because it's at radiator pressure, and this is a pressure cap, is there's a diversionary, as I pointed out earlier, restriction in this T. It's a special thing, and that's supposed to encourage water to flow from this balance tube very slowly and then go back into the system. And that lets the gases, the bubbles, come out into this tank. And it's one of the primary purposes of this thing, besides allowing for coolant expansion against the air pressure, the air bubble, or the air that's in the top of this. It's a very important function, and that's one of the things that got screwed up when somebody just replaced this manifold, this hose arrangement with its special T and regulator valve with just off-the-shelf junk. Okay, I hope that helps somebody not do this or undo this if someone has come in here and made a jackleg mess out of it. And if you're losing a little bit of coolant, these plastic parts are like the first place to go looking. See you next time.